This is your girl, Sada Star, coming to you with another episode of A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman, the official podcast of the Easy Breezy Life community. Before I jump into today's topic, if this is your first time joining us, the Easy Breezy Life is a community of strong-willed women who understand that it can be so challenging to manage faith, family, life, and pursue our goals. Well, here at the Easy Breezy Life, you're going to find a community of like-minded women who are just as fierce, focused, and fired up as you are. It's also important that I let you know that everything we share on this platform is for education and entertainment purposes only. Because we believe that the Easy Breezy Life is a group project, we want you to seek out professional help in every way, shape, or form that you might need it. We are going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with this week's episode. Want to know how I save tons of money on a Caribbean vacation while earning cash back? It's easy. The answer is Rakuten. Sign up online today using the link in our episode notes so you can start saving and earning cash back on your favorite online stores. Ebony Potts is a passionate leader, educator, and mentor from East Orange, New Jersey. After overcoming many adversities in life, she believes that everyone is capable of achieving greatness, regardless of their socioeconomic status, culture, race, or ethnicity. Ebony is a proud first-generation college graduate and EOF alumna. Ebony has been the recipient of the Striving Young Adult of the Year Award and the Outstanding Academic Achievement Award. Ebony has dedicated much of her life in the field of education and aspires to use her story to attest that true success and fulfillment in life are solely attained when the things out of control come into harmony with the power of God, prayer, and perseverance. How are you today, Ebony?
I am feeling great. I am feeling blessed and just honored to be able to be here and just have this time with you.
I am just so glad that you said yes. I've had the privilege of watching your journey, watching you release your latest book, and I cannot wait for our listeners to be blessed by your story this season. So your book, The Rebirth of Me, My Journey, Breakthrough, and Triumph, is a story of moving from hardship to triumph. Tell us what inspired you to write the book.
Yeah, so this book actually was birthed during a time of fasting and prayer. And so I was at a season of my life where I was just was overcoming a divorce, a huge transition in my life. For anyone who has been on the end of divorce, that comes with so much. So big life transition. Also during that time, friendships were changing. I ended up also relocating out of state. And so this book really came at a time where I just felt like I didn't even know what was next for me and what my life was going to look like. And I just feel like I was just really just sitting down, kind of trying to look around me for ways to just like uplift myself. And I realized that it's really hard to come by these days where people don't really talk a lot about the things that they went through or struggling, especially when it comes to marriage and divorce. And so I did feel like, hey, well, God, I don't know how I'm supposed to navigate this time. I don't really have much to go off of. And then I feel like God had to sit me down. I was like, Ebony, you need to just really look within you in the battles that you've already fought, and look just really look at where I've brought you and still where I'm taking you. And so during that time, I just had to look back at all the things that I've never even spoken to a soul, that from adolescence through adulthood, through the marriage that ended. And so that's where I just started experiencing my healing and building strength and breakthrough. So for me, this book is just me testifying to the battles that God won. And that's the story that I decided to tell.
Oh, that made me really think of that this song by Naomi Rain that says, I'll testify to the battles you've won, yes. The rivers you've parted, the ways that I've walked. Fantastic.
Yes. Is that it makes me Maverick City. It's yes. And so for me, that's a huge song that actually has been like dear to my heart. It has during my devotion time, that's the song that kind of centers me, and that's exactly where I lean on when it comes to just realizing that, hey, you know, there were some battles that God has already won, and when I found myself in a current battle of transition after divorce, God's like, you don't have to look around, you don't have to look on social media, because you're not going to find it there, because no one's going to post about the things they're going through. They're only going to post about the good stuff.
Okay.
And
listen,
so
it's a highlight reel, not real life. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So he's like, actually, I just need you to start looking within, and I'm gonna take you back. And so in my book, a lot of that is me going back from adolescence through adulthood and just being able to find peace and solace after divorce, and really being able to just experience all this greatness that God had in store for me.
Wow. So you know what's so interesting is that I was able to invite you. I knew about your book because of social media, but I think we should delve into there, right? Like, you're not going to find this story on social media. And it's because people don't often post the pain. And even if they do, they're giving you only a glimpse into their life. Talk a little bit about that, because before you posting this, like you were taking regular pictures.
Yes,
you looked very happy. I'm like, I had no idea what was cooking until the book was dropped, and I was like, what? What happened? Because you and I know each other from our doctoral program. So wait a minute. When did Ebony move? When did she leave? What happened?
Yeah.
Talk about the role of social media and like how even for yourself, right? Image.
Yes. I am so glad that you're even bringing this question up, because I am 1,000% guilty of being one of those folks that just, I don't know, that maybe it's the millennial side of me, but I was a big social media person, and making sure that everything I posted only reflected the good.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I was just wrapped up in that world of social media. So, anything that was good that was transpiring in my marriage, it was like on highlight for social media. Anything that I felt super proud of, I was posting it. And then also later, of course, when God had to sit my behind down and I had to take a step back, I began actually drawing back from social media, especially when life got hard. And I'm sure we'll talk about it. I don't mind sharing. I was, faced with a lot of turmoil over the course of my marriage. I faced multiple suicide attempts and hospitalizations and things of that sort. So even going through that, social media then became something that I didn't have anything to post after a while. And then when I would get out the hospital, I was like, okay, I should probably like try and put something out there that makes it look like I have it together, when I knew that it didn't fully reflect what I was actually going through.
Yeah.
And so I'm guilty of it. I feel like naturally,
I think risk, right? We take a risk with vulnerability. Some people are going to look at your story and be inspired, and some people going to be like, Ebony's on the internet telling all her business.
Yes. And I'm guilty of didn't want to be, I'm not one of those people. I'm very private when it comes to the things that I was facing, even when it came to, especially my marriage. I actually didn't share a lot of the things that was happening with my closest family and friends. And so over a course of time, not necessarily when I posted my book release, but through later on through my journey, when divorce started happening, no one really knew to the extent of what I was experiencing, because I kept that. I'm very good at keeping things bottled in. Thank God for therapy, right? Because I was able to overcome all of that. And also there was so much shame attached to it, if I'm quite honest. There is so much shame attached to when you're facing certain storms and certain hardships, especially after a certain part of time, and when I knew my marriage was over, I was one of those folks that I grew up in the church, and I just felt like divorce was just this ugly thing, and I just felt so much shame attached to it. I felt so much shame of having to one that I presented this a perfect like ideal like marriage and well put together Ebony on social media, but I'm like, how do I even face the world now?
How do I say that this thing has unraveled? My instinct tells me that there's going to be somebody listening in who your story resonates with them, right? That the pain of divorce, this feeling that we need to be picture perfect for the outside world when nobody's life is that, right? So I think that's the beauty of like TV shows like This Is Us. The reason why they were successful, because for the first time, people saw a TV family that was not like a caricature of a community.
Yes.
It was like, no, this is it. It's messy. It's imperfect. It's blended. Things don't go as planned. Sometimes there's divorce, remarriage, and complications and adoption. It covered, I feel, the full scope of life. But the name of the show is also a day in the life of the alpha woman, right? And the reason why is because alpha women, right? So let's go deeper. Black Christian professional women feeling like we have to pretend for the world and constantly put on, I'm all right. Everything's okay. My world is falling apart behind here, but I'm doing great because I do it too.
Especially during a time where there was a time I was thriving in my career. I was in leadership. I was going through a doctoral program. And so everyone's looking at me and it's like, oh my goodness, she definitely has it all together. I was reaching levels of success very early. I just turned 30, but before I was even 30, I was racking up degrees.
I saw you had degrees and you had a principal certificate.
I was just doing a lot because I'm a nerd. I love school. And that's also a way that I've used to cope with a lot. And so I was reaching a lot of success in my career very early. And though that is great, it also made me feel like I had to uphold that image. Yeah. And what do you do as a Black woman in leadership? I was one of the youngest people in I was the youngest person in leadership. There was a time where when I was in a district where I was the only African American woman in that entire district as well.
Wow,
and so
so
what do you do at that time where you reached a certain level of success and you're still trying to gain the respect of your colleagues because they're like, hey, I'm reporting to you, but you're like my daughter's age, or I have grandchildren your age. And so it made me feel like I couldn't show weakness. Yeah. I even when I was going through the trials of marriage and hospitalizations and suicide attempts, and I have no choice but to use FMLA. Yep. But still not even telling my supervisor or anyone of my colleagues or anyone that I work with that, hey, this is what's going on. This is not me dropping the ball. This is not me showing up and trying not to like
do my job
well in this position and do my job, that I'm actually really struggling. There's some really terrible things that's happening in my life at the moment. Yeah. I still didn't do that. I still was like trying to like hang on to dear life, where it's really cost me my own sanity to a point where I didn't have a choice but now to take a step back and be on FMLA because now I'm in treatment due to a lot of things that were transpiring.
Wow, Ebony, I can connect so much with that story. This need to be perfect. And also the idea that underneath that are the undertones of this superhuman Black woman, strong woman who can do all the things. And so even if people did know the breadth of what you're going through, not knowing if that reception was going to be compassion or if it was going to be punitive, or they're going to tell, she wasn't ready for the job. It would be an automatic reflection of how you weren't prepared, not a call for people to show you compassion. So exactly. I certainly understand that, because even myself, I make decisions to keep certain things to myself because, I may have tried to be open in the past, and the truth of the matter is that like we're constantly straddling between being respected, being seen as having it together, but then also really needing to take care of ourselves.
Exactly. And so that's what I definitely was facing. And it's also, I definitely want to mention, like, it also comes down to where it's like, you don't want to just seem as if you're undeserving of that leadership position that you're in, or that you're not able to take on the task at hand. Because I love what I do. I think at that time I actually was back home at my homeschool district that I grew up in, graduated out of, in my hometown, and I now was a literacy coach and a data coach. So now I'm teaching the teachers that once taught me.
Yeah.
And so
that's so funny, because I feel like I met you during that time, and I remember you in class. You had no emotion. There's no way that I would believe that you were going through what you were going through, because we were in class every week and you were engaged.
I still was. I would just do my best. I would show up 1,000%, and I would still do well. I was still performing well in class. I was still, showing up and trying my best to get the job done at work. But at the same time, while I'm at work, I'm having like an anxiety attack in the closet somewhere. And I did have one colleague who I confided in during that time, who was just like, hey, willing to kind of fill in the gap, because I literally couldn't even breathe at one point while I'm literally at work. But still, doing what we do. Once I put it together,
it's gonna be polished,
put that cape on, and then I went back right out and presented myself and having to lead a professional development or something. So, but God is good, because at the end of the day, he still had to deal with me, and was just like, hey, if you're not going to take this step to put your mental health first and put me first and listen to me and get the support that you need, or even start speaking about some of the things you're going through, God has a way that even if I wasn't willing to, and I definitely wasn't, he still made it where now you have no choice. And now let's go. And so
now we have to face this issue.
Now we're going to have to face this issue. And so I had to go through a time of facing the issues at hand, facing myself, even with all the guilt and the shame that came along with the issues I was experiencing in my marriage. Infidelity ended up creeping also in my marriage. And so dealing with just so much weight and guilt and shame, and on top of being in treatment and therapy, it's only by the grace of God. And I always tell women who have reached out to me since I've released. I remember I shared my testimony on Facebook. I didn't just kind of say, hey, I wrote a book. I just laid out my testimony to those, because then I had women just reach out to me, just like, hey, I actually was been going through this too, and I just never thought someone would be able to have the courage to say this. And I'm just like, I felt like I was looking for someone who also would have the courage. And God's like, well, I'm gonna need you to be that for someone else.
Wow. Thank you for sharing on that. Ooh, and it's so powerful and timely for me in this season that I'm in, which I'll talk about when I get out of the season, because that's what we do. Okay, so let's delve into talking about marriage, right? Because I remember seeing some undertones of something happened here that is generally considered socially unacceptable to share, but it impacted you. And there might be a woman in a marriage right now who's making decision points about whether or not they're in a good place. Is this relationship healthy for me?
Yeah.
To the extent at which you are comfortable sharing, do you want to talk a little bit about the moment you knew this is the end?
Well, that's a loaded question. And the reason I say that is because I was resisting having to face certain things. That moment came very early, but when my marriage actually ended, that came a little later. So that moment when I realized that this marriage is over, where I'm thinking this is just not even mentally healthy for me, emotionally healthy. I remember I filed for divorce at one point, was separated. I filed it and everything, and then I still stayed. Yes. Yeah. And then we ended up filing again, probably a year or year and a half, almost 2 later. So it's
wow. Okay. So but something drove that decision. And I think in the faith-based community, we need to hear.
And so for me, what drove that? I think, and I'm just going to be very vulnerable and transparent. It was the last time that I tried to commit suicide. And that was when I realized something is not right here. And if I'm not willing to make some changes, it can cost me. And so for me, that's when it came. Now, there were a lot of signs over the course of pre-marriage, engagement, then jumping into the marriage, that there were signs. And I'm guilty of not taking heed to a lot of those signs. And honestly, I was just one of those people who felt like I had to just check things off on a list. That's I want the marriage, I want the house, I want the happy ending, I want all of that. And it did come at a cost. And so I remember when I was discharged from the hospital that last time, because I tried to commit suicide over 3 times over the course of my marriage.
So did you have challenges with suicide ideation before you got into the marriage?
And so for me, I had challenges with depression prior to meeting my ex-husband, due to like childhood adolescence, due to abandonment issues. So I'm definitely 100% would say that I did have issues with that. I remember when I was in high school, I was probably like in my sophomore year of high school, I had some issues with depression and a stink with like self-harm during that time. But when it came to suicide attempts, that happened, that just kicked off full throttle from the moment
the marriage made it worse. Yeah.
This
is not the right place for me. Yeah.
It was prior. I tried to commit suicide actually during engagement to this person. That's what I'm saying. It was just, it's a process. So I was while we were engaged, I had my first suicide attempt. And then I would say maybe just a couple months after that, we got married. And then I ended up having another suicide attempt probably a couple years later into the marriage. And then the final time that I'm speaking of, when I was just like, okay,
wow,
this is not okay. And so I think that, though, I feel like everyone does come into marriages with their own stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's like how you were raised, things that you faced prior to meeting that person. The goal is always to try and come to a marriage as whole as you possibly can, to make sure you did a lot of that work.
Right.
But, which I did pride myself in doing, but you're not going to be this perfect person when you walk down the aisle.
How much self-helping can we do?
You're not going to be this perfect person. So I did have some challenges from adolescence. But then now having a partner that begins just making things really hard when it came to my mental health, and also kind of using some of what he knew that I struggled with. Yeah, because I'm a very closed off person, but once I open my heart to him, it's kind of like,
I'm similar.
I'm gonna tell you about everything that I've been through about childhood. I'm gonna tell you about the time where I cried when I lost my first tooth or something. You're gonna know every intricate detail of things that no one else would know. You're gonna learn about my parents' addiction. You're gonna learn about how I had to be raised by my grandma, and how I have like 12 other brothers and sisters, or like things of that sort. And so I'm opening my heart in a way, and then over the course of my marriage, I feel like that also started, the person that I was with started using that as a way to manipulate me.
Yep.
And
we know that this is all you, and you become the problem in the room. As opposed to being even it kind of I don't know, it's really weird to say, but even in the beginning where where one of the early signs for me, if you don't mind me sharing some early signs, was when I started realizing that I was manipulated in a sense when it came to my heart being opened and falling in love with this person. So I'm no longer ashamed of how I was raised, coming from an urban community. Both my parents were heavily addicted to drugs, so my grandma took the responsibility of raising me and 2 other of my siblings. But I'm actually one of many siblings, and so God is good, though. I've met so many of my siblings over the course of my life now. There's just one more that I'm still out there looking for. And so when I met my ex-husband, he presented his childhood in a very similar way. And ideally, of course, we were very young. You bond also. People do bond off of having similar life stories, even similar traumas. It's kind of like, wow, you understand me in a way. Like we speak bonding. The same language. We've been through the same thing. It helps when it comes to opening up trust and vulnerability. And of course, it even helps with you falling in love with someone in a sense too. But it wasn't until after I got married. So this is just dating. But then when I got married, and our marriage started facing certain turmoils and things just seemed so weird. And I remember finding out that everything he told me was not true. And there was a lot of manipulation that came with that, because when we were facing issues in our marriage at the time,
everything that he would say to me was justified off of, it's because of my dad, or because of the way I was raised, or because of my parents. This is why I don't want you to do this. This is why I don't want you to, I don't know, go here and part in this, because it's a trigger for me based off of my childhood that actually turned out not being true. And so it impacted me severely. And that's when I started realizing that this marriage this person is not who I thought they were. And then that's when, I think that was when the door opened to me experiencing a lot of other things within my marriage, because I still wasn't willing to leave the marriage. This was early. This is like right after we said I do. This is like not that long ago, before, we made that commitment. So I could have, been like, oh, it's done. But for me, divorce was like not an option. As someone being raised in the church, I just felt like it was this ugly thing. And I'm like,
oh my goodness, that's so interesting that you mentioned that, right? Because in the second episode of the season, before you do, I asked, single women to ask themselves, is divorce an option for you? Because I recently had to tell someone in my life that, like, God's gonna be all right if you have to get a divorce. Don't think that like he's gonna shun you out of the gates of heaven and he's not gonna love on you. And all of a sudden when he sees you, you're marked. He's gonna be all right.
I thought all of that. I thought I was just doomed to the pits of hell, and there was no way I was gonna come back from that.
He'd so much rather we be healthy than whole than to be in a place that is ruining us, or in a relationship, in a situation. Oh, Ebony, I
know all of that now. I know all of that now. Yeah. But that girl who was young and just got married, that young lady did not know that at all. She did not. That wasn't even something that my mind could even grapple and comprehend at that moment.
Do you feel like you experienced community pressure to stay? Like, do you feel like if it was just you by yourself, you would have left way sooner than, Auntie so and such being like, Ebony, this is the enemy fighting your marriage?
In a sense, one, I feel like I felt some pressure, but that pressure came. Now, this is the interesting part. We talked about the image. That pressure came more so self-inflicted, because I refused. I protected him in a way. I refused for anyone to know this thing. I refused to, even the story I just told with you about his parents and the three-way call, me finding out, there's only probably maybe 3 people that know that story. While it was happening. No one else knows. And none of those 3 people are close family members.
You intentionally protected the image within the family.
Yes. So I was very protective, because I also, since I divorced, but remember, keep in mind, divorce wasn't an option for me. So for me, I always did not share the things I was going through, either how I was being treated in my marriage by my partner, the impact, things like that was unfolding. I did not share with anyone, because I'm like, if I don't plan on leaving, there's no point in me tarnishing their image. And I was just like, it's no point of me trying to like say anything. Now they're going to look at him this type of way, and I'm going to be saying anyway. So it's no point of me sharing these things. And I'm sitting here posting amazing things on social media to uphold that image of this person. And so that got in the way of me even sharing anything. So that pressure wasn't necessarily like from the outside. It was something that, yes, it came later. Of like, oh my goodness, how he's so amazing. Like oh no, like, really? Like, there's no way that person.
Yeah, because it's the image you made, the representation you gave.
But I made that image. I made that representation. I made sure that even if I'm just probably was crying on the bathroom floor that night, that what I posted the next day on social media is not going to be a reflection of who that person that I'm going to bed with that night. And so that pressure, I do feel like a lot of it was self-inflicted. Maybe I don't have the right term for it, but I hope that you follow me.
I am following you because let's talk about, right? So because we're Christians and we talk about honor, and how important honor is. Like, we want to honor our husbands. We want to honor the people we work for. We want to honor everybody around us. And sometimes that honor is to our own detriment. And having to challenge, and me, myself now knowing, is that what God meant?
Yeah.
Is honor protecting predatory behavior? Is honor allowing yourself to be in a situation where you cause them? So I go to a church where my pastor's like, if somebody is doing something to you, abusing you in your marriage, we're getting you out. That person is welcome to get counseling, figure their situations out, get deliverance, and then we can revisit this. But what we're not going to do, which I am so fortunate to be part of this, because I know that everyone doesn't necessarily have it, and even when you do have it, people don't feel comfortable sharing, because the programming, I don't even know where that programming came from me. Nobody ever told me that I had to honor people who were being abusive or honor people who were maltreating me.
Protecting them
I just created this in my mind, quite frankly, because of what I saw happen in my childhood.
So I did such a great job at it that even now, even present day, people can't even fathom that this is there's no way that person is there's no way that he did this, or there's no way that that's that can be the same person that she speaks of. For me, it's okay. I no longer try to prove that to anyone, because at the end of the day, God knows, I know. And that person, and I pray for him all the time, and I wish nothing but the best for him, that God has a way of dealing with all of us. And so I found peace in that. It didn't come overnight. But I'm okay with it, because also I'm like, Ebony, you did that, right?
Yeah.
No one told you to post that all the time. No one told you not to cry, wipe your tears, and not actually tell someone what's wrong. No one told you to say I'm fine every time.
Listen, it's so true. And
I take accountability, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, I love that, because that's also a part of taking your power back and saying, what role did I play in the harm that happened to me, and what will I do differently next time?
Yeah. Right? And so that's the most that we can ever do. I can't go back and change that,
And we sincerely hope that there isn't a next time.
And it might be, and then
that does lead to the other things, right? Because hindsight is 2020. What would you say this is a young Ebony wondering if they should get married to the person they're getting married to. They're experiencing some bumps in the road, but they're like, the Lord, God must have sent this person. What are the signs to say that this might not be the Lord? You might need to look at these facts that are in front of you and move differently. What would those 4 to 5 facts be if you had?
As my former therapist would say, Angelica, she always would say, check the facts. So for women who are like that young Ebony, because that was me all the way, I think that one, if you find yourself even having you're just questioning it, there's a difference. People always use that term, you just have cold feet. How about we're gonna have to talk to Jesus about where's this chill coming from, if anything. And so I think that if I had to give advice to my younger self, I'm gonna do it like that. If I had to give advice to the younger me, who was looking to get married and just more loving all of that, I would check the facts when it came to not the potential and the desire that I had at that time, that I was so wrapped up in, that I was failing to see what was actually in front of me.
I love it.
So I think that if an advice that I would give my younger self would just be to pause for a second. At the end of the day, if you're saying that you're going to embark on marriage and make this covenant with God and spend your life with the rest of this person, that's going to be a very long time. So it wouldn't kill me to take a step back and take some time before that forever that I really want. And making sure that I'm not making this decision based off of hypotheticals, what I desire, and some type of potential that I think I see. But I'm also looking at, how does this person show up for me? How do they show up in the world? Do I feel like this person is pouring into me, or am I pouring out so much that I feel a little empty afterwards, or I'm kind of exhausted? There's a real thing that happens in relationships, even before marriage, where you can experience like burnout, the same way you would in your career. There's a certain burnout that I realized that I was experiencing even before I said I do.
So it was emotionally exhausting before even getting in.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's like something that unless you're willing to take, and remember I'm saying all this now.
Yeah, I know.
After reflecting, but if I was in that moment, I would take a step back and say, why do I feel burnt out? Where is this coming from?